All right, I'm actually nervous to make this video because I've been thinking about this pretty much all day today, ever since last night when I had come across this video on this person's channel. You may have seen her before, LRN Julie. Funny enough, I'm on a retreat right now, so it's not even like I'm able to scroll and just binge watch things and come across something from the algorithm. The way I found her channel was 2 years ago when I had first gotten back into making YouTube videos. I had came across this video which said why you should make a YouTube channel according to philosophy. And yeah, ever since then, every couple of months I think about Julie again. I'm like, hey, I wonder how she's doing. I wonder if she's still keeping up her channel. And you can see she is for the most part. Not a big deal, not the point of this. The point is this video that she posted 3 days ago, which is quite incredible. She posts like once every 2 months, and the one time I think about her, she makes a video pretty much exactly talking about some of my main struggles in my life right now, which mostly involve just career and understanding how to make my life all fit together in a nice organized piece, or multiple pieces that work well together. She calls it in this video, she mentions it as like a career crisis. And she goes through, or she went through her process for how she understood the problem and the conclusion that she came to, which in her case, she decided to become a veterinarian, and she's in veterinarian school. And from what I watched in the video, that made total sense. Her logic, her thinking about it all made really nice sense, and a lot of what was mentioned in the video I think I resonate with. And just considering how much I've been thinking about it today, pretty much nonstop with no distraction, I wanted to actually chat about it myself a little bit as well. So I don't know how long this video is going to be. It might be 5 minutes if I lose my train of thought, which can happen. Or if I'm able to keep a string of thoughts running while speaking, like I was doing the whole day today, this could be an hour long or more. So totally up to fate, essentially, how this video is going to be like, but it's going to be a fun one regardless. So what I want to do is I want to open up a sort of, I guess you can call it a graph here, because one of the main parts of her video was, first of all, the very first part was to run it down. I don't like to make edits, so I'm not going to cut out all that fluff that I just talked about. But she basically talked about the career crisis thing, but also she claimed that she's an artistic leaning person. When you have art as one of your primary, I don't want to call it passion, but one of your primary interests, there can be a lot of difficulty finding work. Because as she put it, there's 3 ways to integrate art into your life in a functional way in society, right? You have one way, which I'm not using her exact words here, but you have one way. How do I drag here? There we go. One is the creator. I'm not sure if this is the term that she said, but that's just what I'm calling it right now. Then you have like the all in, and I'll explain all of these later. And the third one is, I don't know what she called it. Again, I keep saying that. Kind of like for fun, or on the side, hobby. You can think of it as these sort of, there we go. It actually gave me a 3. That's pretty cool. You can think of it as these sort of tiers, right? So a creator is someone who combines career with art. So it's kind of like the same thing. Different to all in. Someone who's all in, it might be easier to explain this first. Someone who's all in on art just focuses literally everything on art. They don't care about anything else. It's not about succeeding or making money, or it's literally just about art, and they will sacrifice everything for art. I forget what example she brought up, and frankly, I don't really have many in my mind. Now, I want to not just talk about art, but maybe just creative processes and philosophy and thinking as well. So I know there's a number of philosophers and spiritual teachers who have kind of gone all in. Not any that I think are really well known. Maybe Lao Tzu, the prodigal guy who East Asian man who goes up into the mountain, 2,000, 3,000 years ago and sits in a cave basically until he becomes enlightened. That's like what you're talking about all in. If there's an artist, a painter who that's what they do, that's like the all in mode, okay? Creator is a mix. It's not like you're going all in with exactly what you want to do. It's more like you're catering a form of what you like to do into your career. You're catering it so that you know that there's a certain audience that's going to watch it. You know that you're probably going to get paid a certain amount. You can find people who can appreciate your work. This is, someone like Ludwig, who I bring up a lot, just one of my favorite YouTubers, clearly really enjoys what he does. He's very creative, but obviously also has a very specific audience and somewhat of a niche, right? His main niche is gaming, though he expands out here and there. That's like a mixing of art and career. Being a YouTuber is her example that she brought up, and I think that's a great example. Being a YouTuber means you're making money primarily from YouTube. And to do that in most cases, there's exceptions to all these rules. And these aren't rules, these are more like guidelines. I want to point that out, that everything I'm going to say here is more like frameworks from which to view things, not rules for how things work. They're just frameworks for how things seem to be working. Anyway, a YouTuber is someone who, in most cases, they need to cater to a specific audience. They have a certain style. So her downside, she mentioned to that, is you have to pander to people. You can't just make whatever you want. You, at a certain point, have to optimize to make a living, at least a minimum living. And so for her, that wasn't what she was wanting to do, clearly, as she explained in the video. Another example, actually, would be Tatsuki, who is like a vlogger, my favorite vlogger of all time. Just really nice aesthetic, love his videos. These two guys, in my opinion, this actually fits them really well. So it's not like any one of these is right or wrong. There's upsides and downsides, and I think everybody has their own aptitude for different ways to involve art or just creative processes in their life. Tatsuki is he does freelancing videography and photography, but also has a weekly vlog, which is just a beautiful, super nice, super chill vlog. These two, I feel like they do really well with this model where their method of creation isn't so deep. It's not like there's a deep meaning behind it. It's just clean creation. I think that's where the creator model really fits in, where the thing you're creating is not like this super nice, deep thing. For those things, these two options might be better. And by deep, I mean like maybe spiritually deep or philosophically deep, deep emotionally. So if your form of creating is maybe more, I don't want to say shallow, but just more relaxed, more stable, then creator path, I think, is kind of that fit. Then you have the all in, like I mentioned, is basically dropping everything else in your life, being willing to live on the street, and go all in on your art. And she had mentioned, this is just generally speaking unrealistic. And there's, for people who have done this and have gone all in, you see these people and they typically reach really high heights in society, but that's often just survivorship bias. A lot of people have gone all in on their passion. I even know a few people, not like they're living in the gutters or in the trenches, but they struggle financially. They don't have a huge following, even if their skill is incredible, which I've come across many of these people. It's just, this is really where you talk about luck and just coincidences and circumstances. So many artists, well-known artists, not on the top of my mind, I'm not a history guy, but I've heard of many artists who only became famous after they died. Their artwork only became well-known after they died. And then you have those people like J.K. Rowling, who it was a fluke. Wasn't she homeless at some point before she had a vision of Harry Potter and then wrote her book? It's totally possible, and this has probably happened with millions of people, where they've been in the same situation, had this amazing vision for a story, wrote the story, and then the story flopped. That's actually probably more likely to happen than the story succeeding. So while it can be a beautiful sort of story to show how you were in the gutters, and then all of a sudden, you hit the jackpot, and that's amazing and beautiful, but it's just so unlikely. Yeah, so for her, this was kind of out of the picture, the all-in model, and for me as well. I'll talk about this after and like how I've considered these three for myself, but I want to go to number 3 first. So this is kind of like for fun on the side, hobby, and with the assumption that you have something else that's funding you. This is the path that she chose. She's going to veterinary school and plans to do the things that she likes for art and for creativity on the side. And, I'll discuss more about careers in the next part of this video, but this is the most balanced one for most people, I think. Because most people like the comforts of society. I'm definitely one of those people. I like having my own space. I like having cool things. I like different hobbies. I like games and being able to go out with people. There are some things, I can talk about this later. Like obviously for some things there's spillover. There are some things in life where you go all in. Like I just did a 2-month retreat where I have restrictions I can't break. That's a form of all in, but that's not my whole life going all in. This is talking more about your career and how you integrate creative processes into that. So this is more like, you work during the day, you do something ideally that's doable, makes you money, and is in some way rewarding, not just like you're dreading working and you're grinding through the day. Ideally, it's something balanced, and then in your free time, you work on your art, you work on your creative processes. So yeah, she chose this path, and I want to talk about my experience with these 3 things over the past, I want to say, the past half a decade, half a dozen years, really, 6 to 7 years. This has been one of my main struggles where I've jumped from thing to thing. I've talked about this many times. And I've just, it's been really hard to determine like where I want to go and what I want to do. Sorry, I'm just minimizing some screens here to be able to look at myself now. As for those 3, let me actually go back to the screen. I think it might be easier for me to look at it. In my mind, when I'm walking around and thinking to myself, it's easier to explain all this stuff. But now that I'm actually making the video, I realize it's a bit clunkier than I imagined. The creator thing is something that I've considered for a while, the combining of the art and the career. YouTube is one of those things that ever since I was young, I was kind of into and curious of doing. When I was younger, I wanted to make gaming videos. Then again, every single time I came back to YouTube, it always was starting with gaming and then trying other things. But like I said, for me, I have other interests that are deeper than gaming, deeper emotionally, deeper spiritually, deeper mentally. So it's very unsatisfying to take a pastime for me, which is gaming, and cater to an audience for it. Another example would be the past month, the AI videos I was making, centering my identity around that. I'm not in love with AI. I like the efficient use cases it has to help me with work and to help me with certain creative things like making these videos and auto time stamping, for example, which I'll do with this video. But that's not a deep enough thing for me. I feel like the stuff that I want to create into the world doesn't need to be deep, but it needs to be me. And I'm not just a video gamer or an AI enjoyer. I also like philosophy, spirituality, martial arts, coffee. I want to have the whole sphere in my sort of creative outlet, you could say. So using a creative source like YouTube as a career limits the amount of myself that I can express. Where opposing to that, these two, they're basically expressing themselves exactly as they are and are able to make money with YouTube. So it's a really good fit for them, this kind of lifestyle. The all-in, I haven't, okay, I have actually thought about this many times, when I've been really dramatic and upset. Oh, I'm going to go to the mountain and meditate and, do what Lao Tzu did. Not very often anymore. I used to do this quite a lot back around COVID. I think I was really that's when I really got into meditation deeply. And stuff like this, or just extremes, which have been bolstered by emotion, not by actual resonance and desire. I think basketball also was like this for me, where I just went way too hard. One of the reasons I think I failed with basketball is because I was just going so hard. I was getting tight and putting all this pressure in like this can of my body. And every single time I went on the court, more than likely I was just not able to unleash myself because I was so pressured to do well or to be a certain way. I remember ninth grade tryouts. I was like, I put on like sad music before the tryout, I think, because I was upset that I wasn't trying out for JV. That's the kind of mentality I had early on, and sneakily the next couple of years as I was training, I was not as dramatic, but I still like internally had that drama almost to the very end. I would say actually to the very end it was better, but anyway, there are some people which going all in, and of course I'm not going to say like there's one is right or wrong here, but for some people, in some cases, this could be the right move, even for your whole life. That's extremely, extremely, extremely rare. But essentially, to the degree that you're willing to give up comforts and whatnot and be okay with that, like honestly, not just like I should be okay with that because I care about this thing so much, not making up a story in your head, but almost like a sense of I have to do this and I'm willing to, and I don't care if I'm on the street. To the degree that you are closer to that end of the spectrum, then this might be the fit. In my case, I thought I was like that with basketball. I tightened my mind and I was like, I gotta do this. I want to prove to everyone. I think also the degree to which you're emotional and dramatic and judgmental about it, that is also a sign that this is probably not for you if you're leaning in this direction and getting those sort of symptoms. So for obvious reasons, I haven't gone all in, even if I thought I've wanted to. Ultimately, reality wins here, and anytime I got close to going all in with anything, I pretty much just backed out due to fear, and that's a very healthy use of fear, because certain things, if I went all in, I think, man, that wouldn't have turned out great. Like, sorry, I'm talking quite a bit, so expect me to drink quite a bit of water this video. For instance, if I was really all in on basketball, I would still be training now, even though I didn't play in college. That's the kind of all in that I'm talking about here. Are you really all in? And this is not an invitation to be like, yes, I'm going to be all in. That's just tightening your mind. All in is like all in. And like I said, I think the style of all in works a lot better with shorter term engagements. Like I'm on a retreat right now, which I've mentioned, and there's a 2-month period which I've been on this retreat with specific restrictions. And even then, it's not like this crazy all in, I have restrictions, but I'm still living, I'm still working, I'm still eating, even if restricted foods. So all in is like all in, okay? The thing that you want to be all in on generally is your life. And if your life and whatever art you do or whatever field you pursue is literally your life, which is not your choice, by the way, that's just a fit of alignment, then this is likely the path to take. And not to mention that people who go all in anyway tend to be quite upset and depressed and all of that stuff. Or, they just struggle financially and are frustrated. There's, all in is almost never the way to do things. Almost never. An example of all in, which was, brilliant, beautiful, might be Martin Luther King, who was all in on civil rights. That would be an example of all in. Nelson Mandela, same thing. Elon Musk, to a degree, he's been kind of weird recently, in my opinion, but he has been to certain extents, all in on certain ventures he's been on, right? Where he emptied his pockets and all that stuff. Okay, and then this one, which I guess I'll go into shortly more, but this is the one that I've always been leaning towards, but struggled the most with, because I always thought that one of these two was kind of my main thing, or what I should be doing. So this one's like basically find a good fit career, and then have that career supply for whatever else you want outside of it. I've leaned in towards this, and to be honest, I think one of the main points of this video, at least from my perspective, is one of my main, I don't know if I want to call it a regret, because I was who I was and I made the decisions I made with the intention that they were good decisions. I didn't know any better. However, if I were to go back in time, knowing everything that I know now, and my intention with what I know now going forwards for the rest of my life, I would have done things differently, and I will be doing things differently, and I will be intending to do things more in this direction for me personally. Now, life throws all sorts of curveballs at you. There's no way of knowing what's going to happen. Maybe something happens and I go all in, or maybe this option becomes more available to me, or maybe I get confused again and I do one of these two without proper reason to, you know? Things can change, of course, but as far as I can see it, and as far as everything that I've learned about myself, this is the path that I would have liked to go on if I could go back in time. And it's the path that I'm going to go on now until things become more clear. Okay? So that's the three sort of ways to integrate art or creative processes into your life, according to Julie. Of course, this is just a framework, not rules. There might be other examples if you think about them. But just for the sake of this part of the video, that's that. The next part is probably the most interesting part to me. So it takes into consideration this thing, right? Because if you're a creator type and you have a thing you like to create, question answered. You do that thing. You cater to an audience which you enjoy. If you go all in, there's no questions. You just do the thing. And by the way, again, I'm not saying these are decisions you make. They're kind of, but it's more like things you lean towards naturally. What's your natural inclination? Follow your inclination, not what your ego says, because your ego is going to make you miserable. Okay? Just one piece of advice from my experience, having been miserable for quite a while. The next part was about this. So how do you actually choose a career if that's the direction you're going in? Julie showed this sort of Venn diagram. I think I've seen it before. I don't think she's the creator of it. But yeah, I wonder how this would look like. So unfortunately, you know what, I'll just do the plain background here. So it's this triple Venn diagram. I think there's also a Japanese Venn diagram that's similar. It has 4 things. The point is, again, these aren't like life rules that some God has instilled upon reality. This is just a model to understand things better with, right? I would look at it that way. So when you're choosing a career, it's almost like a logical decision. Almost, kind of. You want to look at things, generally speaking, from a couple of angles. In this case, it's things you love, and I say love kind of openly there. Really, it means more like or enjoy. Then there's things that can make you money. And by make you money, what that means is generally, you never know. You know, you can get a job, you can get fired, you can get a lower paying job of a certain thing and a higher paying job of another career that's usually lower paying. But generally speaking, common knowledge, does this thing give you a comfortable amount of money or a desirable amount of money that you're looking for? And then there's things you're good at. So I'm sure you've seen this model before, or a similar model. Another circle which we could add here is availability, things that are available in your immediate environment without too much struggle. That just confuses things though, so I'm going to have that as an assumption for this whole thing. That's kind of a prerequisite. You can obviously go out and do things that aren't as available, but if it's a logical decision or a strategic decision, why are you going out of your way? If it's something that you know you love for sure, then that's a different story. But anyway, one thing I'll say is, there are some careers which do all of these things and act as a creative sort of source, which could be a creator. If someone is passionate about AI research, for example, they're passionate about it, that's love. They're good at it, probably, if they were doing it since a young age. And that shit makes you a lot of money. Same with law and same with being a doctor. And, but that's not the case for most people. Most people aren't passionate about that kind of career. Most people are more a balance of many different things. So in my case, I'll talk about Julie's example. She mentioned for her, like, things she loves. Well, coffee, animals was her big thing. She said animals. Okay, so animals was for her. Things she's good at. She kind of struggled here. She's like, I'm not so sure. Science maybe. So she said science, and things that can make you money. And I think she mentioned medicine. I kind of forget. She said math actually, even though she's not good at math. So that was an example for her of like, okay, well, you can make money with math, but I don't love math and I'm not good at math. So that's kind of an outlier that I'm not going to accept. What you're looking for is a sort of thing that fits the middle here. So in her case, animals was one thing, right? Animals, science, and I don't remember what she said, medicine. She combined all those things. Vet. See, that's kind of a very clean decision. It's like, oh, when I was watching, I'm like, oh, right. Like, that just makes sense. Like, you don't have to be super passionate about being a vet. And she talked about that, like how she's not wanting to be this passionate person. Like, just a good fitting career that she can probably do for 40 years, make a solid amount of money, be comfortable, and feed everything else in her life. And, like, genuinely feel happy doing that career as her main job. I think being a vet is amazing. It could be a beautiful thing, and it sounds like reasonable. It's like, oh, that's smart, and that's actually a well-respected, well-paying, solid career to have. So in her example, that made actually perfect sense. I want to go through my example. I've used this model before mentally to understand. I've not like built this Venn diagram, but like I've thought about it in my mind. Whenever I come to this model here, I think, okay, well, what are the things that I want? What are the things that I care about? So things that I love or like. Can I make my text a little bit smaller? There we go. I like organizing things. That's something that I really like doing. Or I like just having things organized. That's maybe a better way to put it. Maybe I'll put my text small here. What else do I love? I like helping people. I like flexibility, but I also like stability. So those two are kind of at odds with each other, and I'll explain more about that and why this has been a struggle for me to consistently stay with this, despite coming back to this model pretty much every year. Everything I've done and tried has been from coming back to this model. I'll talk about that though. So these are some examples. I'll add some more if I remember. Things I'm good at. I think just generally tech, not like super technical math, but tech tools. Systems, like systems thinking, putting things together, building systems. What else? I think I'm good at listening to people. Just some ideas. Things that can make you money. So this one, there's some overlap, right? Tech. What else? Yeah, this one's kind of confusing to me. I mean, she only mentioned math in hers, I think. Things that can make you money, this is more about actual jobs or careers in my mind. So tech careers are generally known to be pretty lucrative. I can even put in things here that, law. I do like logic or thinking, right? I like, what else can make you money? Like, I don't know, medicine, right? There's mental medicine. So in the middle here, there could be, I like driving. I should put that down because I have a funny example I want to put up there. Driving. I like working with people, helping with people, but like working with people in a team. Anyway, so what are some stuff that can go in the middle here? The first one that comes to mind is the thing that I'm kind of working with right now, which is AI automation. This is actually, if you look at it this way, it's actually a really, really clean fit. Why? Because there's an element of organizing, of generating systems using tech, listening to people, to business owners who are having a specific issue they want to have solved. You're almost like a doctor for businesses. Excuse me. I'm helping people in a way. It's not the same as helping someone with a emotional difficulty, which I would prefer, but it is helping someone solve a problem and relieve them unease in their business. Someone running a business, that's their lifeline. So helping them solve a problem in their business is that's helpful. That relieves tension for them. And then there's tech. That's just the kind of piece here where generally tech right now is a place to make money. Now, of course, there are some caveats where there's a lot of layoffs in tech, but if you're building your own business, maybe that's a different edge case, right? So I could select AI automation and just be like, that's it, I'm done. Obviously, there's, and what I said right now is, since I'm intending to go more like this and go in this direction, I am intending to stick with this for as long as I'm able to, for as long as it makes sense to. If you remember the video I made, I think last Saturday, when to know when to quit or when to know when to stop, that video, I forget what I called it. In that video, I said that there's, my theory is that there's many ways to know when to stop and when to keep going with something. And I don't think it's as clean as do it until a specific external outcome. I think specific external outcomes give you more insight into whether to continue or whether to stop. But really, the signal is internal. Are you satisfied, essentially? Are you satisfied with the efforts you've put in, with what you've learned? That's the main thing. There are some actual hard restrictions, like if I'm building my own business, that's me spending my own money and time for a certain period, not making anything back. Of course, time and money are the two main resources within the business and money-making game. So I have limited resources, how much time I can spend on this and how much money I can spend on this. At a certain point, I might have to back out, at least temporarily. Water break. Right, so there are some caveats to this, but as it looks right now, I am likely to be sticking with this for as long as I can. In my specific case, I also have a cutoff deadline for work. I'm still working a 9 to 5 with my dad. That's in mid-August. I think I have to stop. And the real issue there is, if I get let go by him, I get to get unemployment. If I get unemployment, I can fund myself for going to school, which, long story short, but a year ago when I was in the midst of a career crisis, I applied to school for actually business analytics, though the program is now called AI and business analytics, I guess because they've realized it's a great, marketing term. Though business analytics also kind of fits these places. So it's not as flexible as AI automation because having my own business at a certain point will allow me to travel ideally and schedule my day however I'd like it to. Some employees can do this with certain jobs and certain freedoms or flexibilities, but this is more leaning towards the stability side, which I think is fine. But yeah, I think ideally between these two, if I can succeed with a business, there's more scaling opportunity. I can make more money. I can also lose more money. I can also make less money. There's less consistency, less reliability, but that's a matter of me getting better at the skill. So, and there's more flexibility. So, this seems better, but I'm at a point where I might reach a turning point, and I'll talk about that too. I'm going to have to reach a turning point where I need to decide, am I going to continue with this or go with the unemployment that I can get and do business analytics? And that just depends on how much success I'm getting with this in the next couple weeks and months. I don't have much time. In the past, I have gone through quite a bit of other things. But yeah, the point is, the one lesson that I've learned from just going back and forth in my mind is stick with something. And I think I can talk a bit more about that now. Sticking with things until they're done, or until, which done means like, are you satisfied? Is your soul satisfied? That's essentially what the cue is. Is your soul, I don't love using words like soul because they're not so defined and easy to understand, but that's the feeling. Like, are you done? If you're in a relationship with someone, you could be satisfied sexually, you could be satisfied physically, and in the first couple weeks and months of a relationship, things are going to be more passionate than ever in those regards. You eventually will probably be satisfied on that end to the degree where it's kind of evened out. But that doesn't mean you have a deeper satisfaction that's been done. Is the relationship done? Has its purpose been served? Are you just stagnating now? Or is there still more you're curious about? There's more that you're growing, learning about her and learning, or him or they, learning about yourself. Does the relationship still have juice? And it's the same thing with career, I feel like. And knowing when to stop is a matter of, is there still purpose in the business, the career, the path that you're on? One of the biggest fears I had going through deciding careers and failing all these years is I kind of took everything super, I don't know what the word, there's a specific word I'm looking for, but I saw decisions that I would make as final. And so when I got to a certain point with career decisions, I realized I actually don't love this, and this could be for the rest of my life. So I don't want to do this anymore. And then I backed out. Big mistake. Big mistake. 2020, I joined school. The first thing I chose was, maybe I'll go back to the full cam now and just blabber on. The first thing that I chose when I went into school was, I think it was pre-business. I didn't really choose that. That was more of like a default option. And then, okay, let me think about it for a couple more months. Then I chose marine bio. And there has been a lot of regret coming up as I've been considering this today. Also, I remember in late last year, I had the same feeling of regret. I was on a retreat and I was thinking about this. But if I were to go back and do everything again, I would have just stuck with that. I would have just stuck with marine biology. Things that I like, animals. The ocean is another thing that I like. Things that I'm good at. This is a tricky part. The things that I'm good at, you can be good at anything. Yes, we have natural inclinations to be better in one way or another, but I find, the better you get at something, the more you like it, the more you want to get better at it. So if you look at it from a stage of like, where am I at now and what am I good at now? That's different. But going right into school, you're basically not good at anything, bro. Especially me, in my case, I wasn't really good at anything. I really wish, and I'm speaking as if this were a regret, but at the time I didn't really know any better. I just wish I stuck with that. Yeah, marine biologists don't make that much money, and I'd probably still be in school maybe by now, or maybe I'd be doing something cool, making a little bit of money. I don't feel like I need that much money at this stage of my life to feel comfortable and happy. So it would have worked out, I think. What turned me away was excuses, logical excuses. And I'm going to talk about the traps that I've fallen into with the career crisis dilemma. 39 minutes, by the way. This is going great. So, in my case, the moment it started getting very sciencey and formulaic, and I wasn't learning about the animals I wanted to learn about, these were all excuses coming up in my mind as to like, oh, like I don't like this. I like the animals, but I don't like the science. And so I stopped. I gave up on that. Huge mistake. That was I basically kept repeating that cycle with very few. There were a few exceptions, which I'll talk about, but I kept repeating that cycle for years. Ever since then, I've just kept quitting and quitting and quitting because I tried something and there was something I didn't like about it. I think the thing to understand with these kinds of careers, but also the all-in careers and even the creator careers, there's always going to be stuff you don't like. Always. That's just how it is. This has happened a lot even in the past 2 months as I've been doing the AI stuff. There's so much I ran into that I don't like. I just don't like it. I don't like, initially I think some of the reasons were like, this is not my purpose. This is not my passion. I don't want to be known as an AI guy. I like other things better. They're all just mental excuses holding you back. Again, the one thing to note is that none of this has to be forever. None of it has to be forever. If I pick to do marine bio, which man, I'm feeling the regret right now because how cool would that be? That's the key though. Anything you do and stick to can be cool. Okay, so keep that in mind. But yeah, if I kept doing that, who knows where I'd be right now? But I could have always transitioned and changed careers or pivoted. The one thing about sticking to things doesn't mean like rigidly stick to it until a predetermined period. Maybe I start with marine bio and then I really get an interest in botany. And I have all the prerequisites in botany, biology for that, so I can shift easily. Like there's an easy pivot to another field. Instead, I made a hard pivot. I think after that, I looked into acting. I considered transferring to the acting school. I had no experience in acting, by the way. That would have been cool too, but that's like a major hard pivot and a very luck-based field. That's an all-in field generally. So, who knows where I could have been now. I say I don't like to mention that I regret things because I really like who I am as a person now. And I think I've had a lot of experiences, though deeply uncomfortable, that have given me a lot of insight and a lot of depth of character. And I've learned a lot suffering, basically. So it's not like I want to say that I regret it ultimately and I wish I'd changed everything. But there is a feeling of regret. And looking back, man, I would have just loved to stick with it and then stay with the things I didn't like until I figured out how to like them. Like I mentioned before, you generally don't like things you're not good at or don't understand. If you just work to understand them better and get better at them, you will start to like them more. If something is difficult, there's a lot of pleasure in understanding how to work that thing. That's how dopamine works. Dopamine is generated in the pursuit of something. So when you have like certain games and certain media, which just gives you instant hits of dopamine, very bad for your system, lowers motivation. But if it's a scientific problem, how the wind and currents of the oceans work, which I think that was one of the things I was like, nah, screw this. If I just stuck with that and figured it out, that would have been sick. Like, oh, now I know how it works. And then eventually maybe I would have gotten the chance to work with orcas and sharks and whales. And that would have been sick. That would have been so cool. And just talking about it, I'm just like, wow, I'm almost tearing up because of how amazing that sounds. But I didn't stick with it. I reconsidered. I think actually, yeah, acting was the next thing. Then I think I considered I didn't really consider, but it was either Army or IT. The point is, any of these things could have really worked. Acting, maybe not, because like I said, it's more of an all-in luck field. But just as a career, like army could have worked. Now, army is a commitment. It's a thing that you can't easily turn back from. But it's like 4 years. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a life-breaking commitment. Air Force, I think, is 8 years. That's like a bigger commitment, which I understand why you don't want to get into that. But 4 years is like, not a huge deal. Yes, there's other commitments like going to war, fighting other countries. Maybe you have a girlfriend. I think a mentor of mine, when I was bringing up the idea of joining the army, the ROTC program at my school, he was like testing it, like poking at it. And one of the questions he had for me was, let's say you fell in love with this amazing girl and you love her and you want to spend every day with her. And then you get called to go overseas and fight in a war. Like, I was like, oh yeah, like that would suck. Well, guess what? Since then, which is 5 years ago, I haven't been in a relationship. Like, I haven't gotten a girlfriend. So, yes, he was poking at that, but it ended up not even being valid. And even if it was valid, there has been no major wars, I think, as far as I'm aware, for the US involving soldiers, like in massive amounts. It would have been doable. And I would have had a lot of experience. I would have been 2 years in by now, a little bit more than 2 years, just about 2 years. 2 years left, met a lot of people, and gotten a lot of skills that I can apply to a career outside of the military afterwards. Just these paths that I didn't go on. And then the final one, which I stuck with, was IT, which I stuck with. I just didn't change from there. I got into it and didn't study, didn't care, just did whatever I wanted to with my time. Apologies. Yeah, so major, it's basically regret. It's regret, though I also don't regret who I am and my experiences that I've had. Looking back, I'm like, I wish I just stuck with something. The happy news is you always have the chance to stick with something now. And I'm facing that same decision now where I can decide to stick with what I'm doing now and make minor pivots depending on what comes up, just like I could have when I was in school. So that's just a bit of a tidbit of info. I personally struggled a lot. I think I didn't even want to go to school initially. I was all in on the basketball, and when the basketball failed, I was like extremely judgmental and not apprehensive, but there's a certain word that comes to mind that's not on my mind. It's on the tip of my tongue. And I was like, I don't want to go to school because I hate school and I hate how everyone in my life tried to make me go to school when I really wanted to play basketball. It was like I had a grudge. I had a strong grudge against school, and I carried that throughout schooling. I even still have that to a degree now. There's a sense of a grudge of like, screw that. I hate that shit. It ruined my life. It didn't, though. That was just my past experience and my own, my own failure. So I carried that into school, and that was with me for the whole time, I think. So I did have difficulty. I wasn't just lazy, per se. I was lazy in some respects. I wouldn't study when I didn't feel like it. But a lot of it was also just like thought patterns, beliefs that I was struggling with and still do. So yeah, I'm not going to go into too many loops about that. But what I have right in front of me, it's this AI thing, which I started on a whim. Again, none of this has to be perfect. I think that's a big mistake also, is thinking that you have to find the perfect career, and if there's something wrong about this one, then you don't want to do that. There's no way to know. There's no way to know unless you stick with it for a period of time and learn more about it. There's just no way to know. We all have limited time spans of our lives, and you can always change again once something else makes sense to change to, or there's a pivot, an opening to do that. There's nothing holding you to something forever. There's bigger commitments like Air Force, 8 years. I don't know if that's the actual number, but Law school, 3 years. In the big scheme of things, 8 years is quite a bit of time, but like 3 years, 4 years, these aren't huge amounts of time. Compare that with the past 6 years of my life, not committed to anything. Okay? Trying little things for like months at a time. That's not enough time to know if you like something and to know if something will work for you. Like genuinely, not emotionally, just will this work for now? A couple months at a time is not that. And yeah, military 4 year commitment, law school 3 year commitment, marine biology, what is it? Like a master's could be 2 to 4 year commitment. I ended up doing nothing past 6 years. I got a degree. Wow, amazing. A Bachelor of Arts in IT. 2 years to find a job. Got a job with my dad. It wasn't even a job that I really earned. It was a job that was given to me. Yeah, this stuff is look. I'm only 24. Like I have, you know, most likely a long life ahead of me, as most people, average 78, 80 years. Most people have the chance to live that long. But I'm not going back to do a bachelor's degree, at least anytime soon. You know, things are changing. The world is changing. AI is coming in. The workforce is changing. Yeah, man. I pretty much messed up, and I know I don't want to kick myself on the back for that. But looking back, I would do it differently, knowing what I did, knowing what I know now. That also means looking forwards, I want to do it differently. I still have a ton of resistance sometimes working. Sometimes I sit down to work and just face a whole ton of resistance. Like I know that feeling of like just stick with it until it's done. That also applies to my current day job. And I sit down sometimes and my body like locks up and like just I don't want to work. To me, that's sort of a I don't love using this word lightly, but like a trauma response. We all have, experiences in our past which affect our nervous system and emotional, I guess, system over long periods of time, even in places where it doesn't make logical sense or you don't think it does. And that can take time to heal and process. So, of course, we have those kinds of challenges, but I can still sit with the difficulty. Strong determination sitting is a phrase in meditation, and like let it soften. Because the more you sit with that kind of difficulty gently, the more it starts to move and open you up. Almost like if you're a butterfly or a caterpillar in a cocoon. This analogy has been made, a number of times. I don't know if it's true, but it just makes sense. If you were to cut open the cocoon, the butterfly wouldn't have gotten the strength it needs by pushing the cocoon outwards with its wings to fly. So it wouldn't be able to fly. You bailed it out to die. It needs to push out and to get stronger to reach its next level of life, of its cycle, which is to be a butterfly and to fly. So part of for me is like the difficulty of sticking with something is required to move to the next stage. Another difficulty I had was even if I was like deciding to stick with something for a short period of time, I might encounter this issue where if we go back to that diagram, let me open it up here. There's a whole bunch of things that could fit here. Lawyer is another one of these things. Lawyer, okay? They make good money. They do involve some listening, some systems, logic. I feel like I'm good with logic as well. Put that in there. It's getting a bit messy, but make a ton of money. Now, they're not really flexible, at least not early on for the first, 3 years? So you have 3 years of law school, 3 years of inflexible work, 6 years. Not a huge deal. You make a ton of money, and after a certain point of time, you're generally flexible. If you're a partner or working in-house, not a huge deal, right? These sorts of commitments aren't that big, and you can always switch after you're like satisfied, made your money, have learned all you want to learn from law, and don't need to be there anymore. You can switch, But yeah, this was a consideration. Marine bio, like I said. I've considered counseling, like therapy work. There's always a different excuse that comes up. And yeah, Pick something that's directionally correct. Stick with it until it is done. Stick with it until it is done. Yeah, so much regret. Happy who I am, happy the experiences I've had, but I've had those experiences to learn this lesson. This is the lesson that's to be learned. Another thing, sorry, let me get this set up properly. Another thing to know is, another fear was, if I choose this thing and I'm committed to it, what if something else comes up that I care about more in that time period? Then switch. You can, if you have this grandiose, amazing purpose that appears out of nowhere while you're in the middle of law school, quit law school. If it really matters that much to you, you can quit law school, or you can go through and get it done, and wait 2 years or however long more you need. It's not that big a deal. It's just not. You can commit to things and back out of commitments. Again, there's some exceptions, like the Army situation is trickier. But, don't make major commitments like 8 years. But let's say, okay, you made a 4-year commitment to join the Army. You're a couple months in. You realize you have a passion for XYZ thing. Start working on it in your free time. And then when you're done with the Army and you want to make that a career, make that a career. Don't waste 6 years of your life like I did. Not wasted completely, but in regards to career and just making all this so confusing. Yeah, in a way, that's wasted. And I want to feel this regret because it's a lesson. It's just a lesson that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. It's not a lesson to not follow your dreams. It's a lesson to... It's not even a lesson to be logical and like, oh, you can have your dreams and passions. It's just a lesson to like, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. You can do things you love and work a normal job, and then eventually make the thing you love your normal job. Or you don't need to. Like, it's maybe you don't know what you love and how that could be a career. It doesn't need to be. You can do it on the side, or maybe you can. It's just do things. Do them until they're done, and don't look back. Don't look back. I can go back and do marine bio, but it's the same thing. At that point, I put the AI to the side. So theoretically, if I focus on the AI now, right, and I somehow make that full time, then I can scale it and make more money. I can travel, get more experience, do more stuff that I like on the side. Maybe I can somehow get involved with marine bio again. Maybe I become a director of a fund, or like I help with charities, or I do volunteer work. Like, maybe I decide to go back to school if I'm at a point where I've made as much money as I want to with the AI. I feel satisfied and don't feel the need to continue anymore, or don't have a need. I could also do it on the side. Maybe I make so much money with the AI system business, I can cut my hours down to 2 hours, and then study marine bio on the side. You see what I'm saying? Same goes for law and for counseling and for everything else that I've considered so far in my life. Yes, we never know when we're going to die, or when we're going to become incapacitated or not be able to do things, but that shouldn't keep you frozen and not doing things, making yourself suffer, right? So yeah, I don't know how much more I want to talk about this. I think I kind of said my point. I could go on more tangents and more discussions, but this is really where it's at. It's just a matter of let go of any grudges you have. One, don't feel like things are permanent. This is the difference between me and Julie, I feel like. And in some cases, it being permanent is fine. There's nothing wrong with being a lawyer your whole life and doing all your fun stuff on the side and getting better at law and enjoying law, or being a vet. Nothing wrong with that at all. But they're also not life sentences. You can do law or be a vet for 4 or 5 years, then decide, hey, I've tried this. I made some money. I gave it a good effort, and I actually just don't like it. That's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not backtracking. It wasn't a mistake. Maybe I can look at that, my last 6 years of my life the same way, where like, hey, it wasn't a mistake. It's just a really valuable lesson that I'm going to carry with me and share with me to the rest of my life, like that might be worth the 6 years it took to get here, and everything else, the countless other lessons and just depth that I've been able to acquire on this journey has been unpleasant, but it's going to feed me for the rest of my life. Okay, so don't be afraid to make mistakes, even if they're this mistake. But hopefully, if you're watching this video, this is not the mistake you're going to make. Make your own mistakes, learn from them. And yeah, I really enjoyed making this video, talking about things. Pick something, stick with it. Feel free to pivot to a related career if it makes sense. Things can come out of nowhere. Yeah, I don't want to keep blabbering. Hour-long video. Really enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe and like and comment and talk to me about stuff. Peace.